I felt a sensation of elevation. Was I now going into the heavens? Was this the caring arms of the afterworld? If so, why could I still feel pain? My head was spinning, and my stupor was rife amongst the echoes of noises and ripples of cramp and soreness. I resisted opening my eyes for fear of seeing what was around me. Then I heard water. I braced myself as I opened my eyes. On gazing around, I began to believe I was still of this world. I looked towards the sound of the water I had heard. There was a gully with precious liquid gushing down it. I did not move, still doubting as to which kingdom I might be in. My body was sore and aching all over, leading me to wonder if it were obligatory that I should carry this miserable pain with me into the next world, unless, of course, this was the hellish underworld that the God-fearers had constantly ranted about. I had never believed in heaven or hell, neither God nor the devil, but now I was speculating, would that be to my regret? This thought caused me sorrow for a short time. Soon after, I became quite sure I still existed on earth, as my pain and the water were both genuine. Swiftly I was upon the water, lapping like a crazy man. In my frantic lust for this exquisite liquid, my throat pained me greatly, and I found my voice. "Ah!" I cried through gritted teeth. A stinging pain in my throat that I had never experienced before had me wailing with both hands clasped around my neck. The sudden stinging slowly ebbed, and I returned to the gully, this time with great heed as I slowly sipped the water using cupped hands. As I drank, I felt my whole body responding to rehydration. The water diverted to every part of my sapped constitution. It felt ecstatic to obliterate the torture of thirst, and I almost passed out from the sudden euphoria. While in this state of elevation, I uncontrollably urinated. It felt good. I would never have thought that drinking fresh water and lying in a pool of my own waste would bring me such pleasure. For the first time since the storm had thrown me into the sea, I felt I was not going to die. Not yet, anyhow. Now my thirst had been satiated, a voracious hunger set about me. I had become ravenous through renewed hope. After having my fill of water, I sat and contemplated my surroundings. I was sitting on a gradient where shafts of sunlight pierced through a lush terrain. On endurance of great pain, I rose to my feet and wobbled with dizziness for a short while. Through the gaps of the verdure, I was able to look down on some areas of beach, including the one I had arrived on. I knew this as I spotted my raft bobbing and lolling between surf and sand. It was no great distance from my raft to where I was now. In fact, it would have taken a fit man no less than around 10 minutes to reach this spot. But I was somewhat perplexed as to how I actually managed to make it here at all, considering the very poor shape I was in. A slight bristling of self-worth gave vent to a renewed zest. I still felt incredibly weak and sore, but I was determined to stay alive. I took some deep breaths and began to traipse upwards, following the water channel, and as I ascended, questions flooded through my throbbing head. Are there people here? Is this part of a mainland, or is it an island? Am I alone? I was in bad shape and needed sustenance. Any morsel would currently do just to tide me over so I could think straight. Otherwise, this starvation would nag and scatter me ferociously. I will eat my hand, I mused. The unrelenting heat continued to sap me as I struggled on. Heavy perspiration had me stopping frequently to obey a command for water, sipping very slowly as the muscles in my throat were still tender. The memory of the unbearable thirst was fresh in my mind, which had me panicking each time I lost sight of the water gully that, on my ascent, began to disappear underground. I calmed myself. I could always find it again, or die. I arrived at a clearing that allowed me to survey more of the land. My appraisal gave probability to one of my nagging questions. This indeed did appear to be an island, although I wasn't sure. A short distance up ahead it looked as if nature had designed its own lookout post, for there was a crop of rocks that rose and jutted outwards like a lofty perch. I clambered up the rocks and got to its highest point, and on doing so I became quite nauseous from vertigo. Instinctively I lay down on my stomach to allow the whirling and dizziness to quieten. When I was calm, I crawled down a little bit and gained a position that felt safer to me. From this lofty observational post I could see now, more or less, that this was an island. I was fairly central and could see the majority of the land with blue sea all around. The land appeared to be long and narrow, with its ends stretching into rocky peninsulas that disappeared into the ocean. I would have guessed its length to be around 2 miles, with its widest point being about 1 mile. My immediate thought was that this island, although small, would be big enough to sustain life. Much of the interior was lush and green, with rocky borders randomly separated by small sandy bays. In one of the bays I could see my raft, which had been pushed up quite an implausible distance onto the sand by the soft tide. So far, all seemed devoid of life. The thought of dismay of realising I may well be the only person on this land took some while to ebb. I mustered up positivity and decided I would attempt to reach the nearest rocky peninsula where, if fortune favoured me, I might somehow catch a fish in the rocky shallows. I knew in my heart that the idea of catching a fish with my bare hands would be highly improbable, but nonetheless it seemed any positive notion at this time would help me cling on to life.